Hey, Jimbo, you ready for this deal?
Let her buck.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast, brought to you by the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum and the Buck and Flamingo Turquoise Shop, both located in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma. It's old Cody over here, and as always, I have my main man with me, Mr. Rodeo historian himself. I hope he has his pencil sharpened today, Jimbo Snively. Good morning, Jimbo. Good to see you. Who do we have the pleasure of visiting with today?
Hey, Cody boy, we're not in the Osage. I can tell you that right now.
We're not in the Ben Johnson Museum either. I can
we're
tell you
not,
that
not.
right now.
We're in the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center in Duncan, Oklahoma.
What a place this is, too.
Oh, beautiful place. Beautiful place. And we're here for the Chisholm Trail Prairie Circuit Rodeo Living Legends induction ceremony. And we've got one of the inductees right here with us today, Mr. Lyle Sankey.
Oh, yeah.
And Lyle, Cody, he's on a pretty selective list. He's one of 4 guys that have ever made the finals in all 3 rough stock events: saddle bronc, bull riding, and bareback, along with Larry Mahan, Bobby Berger, and Ty Murray. So that's a pretty select company.
Yeah, it is.
And he comes from a great rodeo family, and we're just tickled to get to visit with him today. And also we got Mike Anderson, our old buddy Mike Anderson, with us today.
He's a pretty darn good rodeo historian himself,
Yes, he
Jimbo,
is.
talking
He might
with him.
make me look at my whole card today. I don't know. Anyway, we're glad to have Lyle and Mike with us. Welcome to the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
Oh, good to be here.
We're pleased to have you. Where'd you grow up at, Lyle?
Well, most of it was in Rose Hill, Kansas.
Yeah.
That's
Where
where-
is that?
Just on the southeast edge of Wichita. That's where my rodeo career started.
I knew you guys lived in Kansas and were from Kansas, but for some reason I had it in my mind, just because Ike lives up north a lot, that you guys may have originated from up north somewhere.
Well, I was actually born in western Colorado, Grand Junction, but we moved this direction when I was pretty young in upper grade school. And then the place in Rose Hill my dad bought when I was a freshman in high school. And that was the first time I ever saw rodeo. I was 17, almost 18.
Wow.
Going to little play days, and they paid the High Point guy and girls entry fees in a rodeo, and I didn't know anything about it. I thought, well, how different can it be? So I borrowed some cutting horse spurs from my dad and did the bareback riding and the bull riding without a lot of success, but I sure got hooked.
Who'd you look up to back then?
Well, again, I didn't know anything about rodeo back then, but as I got involved, John Macbeth, which is one of the highlights for me this weekend, lives 60 miles from us and had as much influence on my career as anybody. And more than the riding part of it, the mental, the emotional part of it. And, I can't say enough about what he did for my career.
Right.
That's amazing. To me, you guys have such a historic name in the rodeo business. It's just hard to believe that you never even seen one or hadn't been around one until you're 17 years old.
And my dad was in the horse training business, cutting horses, and he wasn't big on the idea of rodeo, but he let me do that one, and he was sure I was never going to ride bulls. Of course, that's probably what I got the most notoriety for in my career, to win the NFR bull riding average twice. And my first passion was the saddle bronc riding, but it's just interesting how things turn out. And then we came home one day, my brother and I, and he had 6 or 8 bulls there. They weren't anything special, but some guy had been using them to have a little weekly practice bull riding. So Bud decided he'd just build some bucking chutes and start doing it at his place, Bud being my dad.
Oh, yeah.
And then from that, my brother and he got a rodeo company going. I was involved in the first bunch of bulls we bought, but I was rodeo and I wasn't going to be there to doctor them and brand them and take care of them. and they were arguing over what they sold. My brother wanted to build a rodeo company. My dad wanted to sell the ones to make profit. So I just sold my share to them, and I was out of the bull business, and it worked out well for everybody.
You know, there's a lot of great bull riders that I remember from when I was a kid going to rodeos with my dad that they were pretty darn good saddle bronc riders too. You know, seems like I even remember old Tough Hedeman riding saddle broncs at places like Cheyenne and places like that.
Yeah, Tough, Cody Lambert both rode broncs
Yep,
pretty
Cody
well.
Lambert, there's another one.
Of course, Donnie Gay, he was more concerned about staying healthy for the bull riding, but he rode broncs pretty well.
I think you see more bareback bull riders, bull riders, bareback riders than you do bull riders, saddle bronc riders. Am I wrong about that? Or?
It seems like it kind of jumps around, but probably nowadays maybe so.
Yeah. Which one's harder?
They all have their own unique challenges. That's a hard one to pick one out. For me, I couldn't have a favorite, and I couldn't think one was harder. I had to give my energies to whichever one I was struggling the most in so that I didn't compromise one event over the other.
Did you ever have to get on all different events the same night?
Oh, yeah, most of the time I did, yeah.
You tried to draw it that way, I guess.
There were rodeos where I'd be working 2 a day and get at least one re-ride at each rodeo, so that was 8 head the same night.
Wow.
And, of course, the big Cody, Red Lodge, and Livingston, 3 rodeos the same day. If you happen to get upright, you could work all 3 rodeos the same day. So, I could be getting on a lot of stock at the same time.
Yeah. Did you have to get your mind right? I mean, you said you have to tell yourself I'm getting on a bareback horse now, or was it just natural? I mean,
no, I convinced myself. I was told from the start I was too big.
Yeah.
I started too late, and it's in the wrong part of the country. All of those, which I thought were amusing, considering how many 6-foot-plus world champs we've had. And I know plenty of guys that started later than I did. And I lived 60 miles from a world champion and several NFR cowboys. I thought, some of this just doesn't add up. I thought I was too little to play football in college. I think God probably didn't screw up. There's going to be something I'm good at. So I just followed what my passion was.
Yeah.
Growing up in high school, my team roping partner, he rode bulls and bareback horses and broncs and everything. And every year seems like he'd go to this deal called the Sankey Rodeo Camp. It was in Abbeville, Kansas, and it was really something else. I went and visited him there once, and you guys had like barracks where they all stayed in an old school or something, and they all stayed right there. And can you tell us about those schools? Were you involved in any, those rodeo camps?
Oh, yeah. That was our most unique, I say my wife and I's most unique rodeo school, but we did it partly as a ministry as well as a rodeo school, so we would spend a lot. I mean, sometimes we didn't make money. We might have 60 students, but I'd bring in 30 pro cowboys. So we had great instructors. I mean, world champions in every event helping coach and guys that were good communicators, plus my regular staff that did the other schools. But everybody would stay right there in that little schoolhouse, sleeping bag situation. And then there was a carpeted room that where all the wives and girlfriends would stay. So it was very unique and very fun. And a lot of guys came through there that went on to have good careers. So.
Who's some of the guys that came through there? And who's some of the guys that was teaching them, too?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'd worked with the Garrett boys, Bud Monroe, world champion. Randy Taylor was an NFR qualifier that came. And, if I stopped and thought about it, there are a ton of NFR cowboys, but some of them regional, some of them traveled away just because they wanted to come and be there with us.
Seemed like there was Gary LaFew had a camp for people out that direction, but it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of other schools and camps going on quite to the scale you guys had pumping out riders. And
back then,
you had to have quite a bit of stock on hand to get 60 or 80 riders in there and get them riding something too.
The Rumford Rodeo Company took care of it. Of course, Bronc is legend in pro rodeo, all the awards he's got.
What about his dad, though?
And his dad, yeah, wonderful. Floyd was so wonderful. But they had the stock there at Abbeville, and they would lease, do whatever they had to do to have enough livestock. So it really was a unique situation.
I remember Bronc's mom, old Lola. She's still around, I think.
Yes, sir. She was wonderful. She was so wonderful.
Yeah. I've heard her called wonderful and all kinds of other things.
Well,
Those rodeo secretaries, it seemed like over time they'd get meaner and meaner and meaner. She never was mean to me because I grew up around her.
She was great to me, but it seemed like if the stock contractor was a gentle, easygoing guy, then his wife was scary, or vice versa, you know. So I guess they just had to role play good cop, bad cop.
That explains everything. It goes on in my life too.
Yes, sir.
You done solved everything for me, Lyle. I appreciate that.
Well, it seems like anymore rodeo is more specialized than maybe it was back then. You don't see hardly any 3-event guys like you did back then, do you? I mean, even Stetson Wright just does the bronc and bulls.
Yeah, the bareback riding is so physically
So hard on
brutal. I remember I traveled a little bit with Bobby Berger, who's another legend in the circuit, a Kansas boy, and
Yeah, that little list you said a while ago, 2 out of the 4 Prairie Circuit guys.
Yeah.
Kansas.
Right.
And Bobby, I asked him why he wasn't riding bareback horses. That was before the rodeo on. Of course, I was taping my thumb, my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder. And he says, "Look at what you're doing. You never have to ask me that again."
Right.
But he was a hero because at that time, only he and Larry Mahan had been to the finals and qualified in all 3 rough stock events. And that was always on my goals list. I would sacrifice any shot at a world championship in the bull riding possibly to make the finals in bareback riding because I wanted to be the 3rd guy to ever do that. And then, of course, after that, Ty Murray. But with the bull riding organizations and stuff today, that's a record that probably will hold.
Yeah.
But it's just so brutal, you know, and Stetson's so incredible in the 2 events he works. I'm sure he's been on some bareback horses, but it's really demanding. My good friend, the 8-time champ Donnie Gay, tried to talk me out of riding bareback horses. And he said, "Don't you think it hurts the other events?" Now, if you know Donnie, that was a rhetorical question. It always is in a conversation with him. And his intentions were good. He wanted me to pursue the events I had had the most success in. And he ends it up by saying, "Besides that, you don't ride very good." And I knew what his motive was, but nobody else can tell you what's in your heart. That was the year I made the national finals of the bareback riding, by the way. So, you know, it was great.
You know, I would have lost money that Jim Shoulders wouldn't be on that list. I would have just lost a pile of money.
Yeah. Well,
He ain't on it, though.
It's a good thing he didn't pursue the bronc riding
Bronc
because he
ride.
was
Plus,
a phenomenal.
finals was toward the end of his career too. 59. He just went
that's
to
true.
a couple of years with the national finals because he was winding down by then. Who else did you travel with?
Well, in reality, I travel with a lot of guys for short periods of time. You know, I traveled a little bit with my brother till he said forget his card number because I was going so hard. I wanted to be at a rodeo every day I wasn't at home. He did not want to rodeo that hard. I traveled some with Bruce Ford, the 5-time world champ, but it was hard with those 1-eventers, and I was doing 3 events because we weren't always up in the other events the same. You know, Pro Rodeo talks about the all-around, but they don't facilitate it very much for multi-eventers. So it makes it really difficult. And, travel a little bit with Bobby Berger. The funnest thing with Bobby, one of my best smart aleck comments that I knew I'd never get a chance to say again, when I won the all-around at Houston, it was second most money ever won at a single rodeo, and it was $8,700. Well, now the bonus alone's $50,000. So we were going to Baton Rouge or somewhere right after Houston. I was riding with Bobby, and his little airplane, it was called the Bumblebee. It was yellow and black. And I was already thinking about a plane to help me get the finals in the bareback riding. And I asked him what that plane cost. And coincidentally, it was $8,700 back when he first bought it. So I looked over at him, tried not to be smirking too much, and I said, "Just one good rodeo, huh?" Which, of course, the most money I'd ever want one rodeo up until then. And he just smiled, nodded his head, and he said, "They're not all going to be this easy."
That's true.
Like, I'm not sure which part of this one you thought was easy, but
Yeah.
I knew what he meant.
Yeah.
But that was the thing back then. Money, what you did win, it went a ways too. You know, where money doesn't go as far now. You know, even
Yeah,
though the purses look big, but I don't know what your buying power is a lot better than it was.
I
then.
can't imagine an $8,700 airplane going off rodeo.
Well, I wouldn't get
Even
it.
back then, that sounds like it might be worth pretty cheap for an airplane.
Yeah, I want my airplane costs a lot more than that.
Well, when I went into Houston, we were pretty broke. And my wife had said, whatever you win the first go-round, send it home so your entry fees don't bounce. And I had a bull that they just won $7,000 on to win San Antonio. It was a one-head bull riding there. and I barely placed on him. And everybody laughed and thought just how goofy that was. The second go-round, I had just a fighting bull from the NFR, and I won the go-round, which was just as absurd. I mean, I don't judge them. They pay those guys to do it. But one was just as goofy as the last. And, of course, guys were laughing both times about I should have won more on the first one. And the second one, they're telling me they just made up the other one. And that ended up being the year I won the all-around. So it was an interesting way to get there. But it was fun. It came in down to the last day, and there was a timed eventer that was ahead of me. And I had an eliminator in the bronc ride, and I'd made it back to finals in all three. And they bucked me off in the bronc ride, and I was really trying to let it rip. And this horse just hard to ride anyway. And he swooped off the fence and bucked me off. So now it came down the bull ride, and I had a horse in the Bears, horse in the Bronx that were eliminator pinned at the NFR. I had another one in the bull riding that way. And, a guy I really respected, Sandy Kirby, who was always a two-eventer at the NFR, Bears and Bulls. And he said, he rode Bronx too, but just not hard enough to go to the finals in it. And he said, man, you don't draw very good at these things. And he's never negative, but that bull in that big open pen turned out to fit me perfect, and I ended up winning the bull riding, which is enough to win the all-around at Houston that year. So, kind of fun. You never know how it's going to go. Just get on and do your job and let things go how they go.
Did you ever have some pretty good national finals?
The finals was always really good for me.
Yeah.
My first year I went in the bronc riding, split the first go-round, and I think I ended up sixth in the average. Sometimes having those past world champion horses in the best deal. Back then, they only paid 4 places. And on all those NFR horses, I had 5 of them there that week, and I won 5/5. They were nice horses. They were just a little too old to place in those go-rounds because they had them in with the best horses in rodeo. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I won the bull riding twice, the average in the bull riding twice. The worst one, we'd been to Argentina on a deal with Jim Shoulders that Wrangler sponsored. And, man, I was icing. My knee was hurt. My ankle was hurt. It was 2 weeks before the NFR, so it really didn't make sense. But everything was paid for and great opportunity. My wife thought for us to go on a trip like that. And I was in a bathtub full of ice each night, but I'd bucked off 3 of my first 4 bulls. And that never happened to me at the NFR. And I remember thinking there's always somebody that only rides 1 or 2 bulls at the finals, and I was not going to be that guy. So that led to one of the records I hold in the PRCA. I went to the buck and bull sale the next day, and my friend Jim Shoulders wouldn't let me get on. He said, I'm trying to sell bulls, and I thought you should have been watching better. I've been making some look really good. But he wouldn't let me get on, so pretty soon they announced some bull was a former NFR bull, and at Rodeo Incorporated, who was out of business before I had my permit. But he turned back, somebody fell off, so I just bid on him. They could have made him be the high-selling bull. I was buying him so I could get on. And I told Jim I own him, have him load him, so he did. And I made the whistle, and my best fan was there, best encourager in my career, which was my wife. And he wasn't very good. He'd make a round and waller out of it. And I was on his head. I was off my rope, into my hand, away from my hand, but I was there when the whistle blew. And my wife knows that I hate it when somebody says, good job, and you didn't ride good. Mm-hmm. So I walked over the fence, and she said the perfect thing. She says, well, how'd you feel? And I laughed. I said, look, I know it didn't look good, but if I can make the whistle ride like that, imagine how it's going to be tonight. And I was talking myself into it. But as she was walking away, I hear her talking to herself, and she says, he's back. And that's when I realized I was back. So I went from dead last that week to winning 4th in the average by the time it was over. So it's funny what one encouraging word can do for you.
Yeah.
Was that buck and sale, was that in Oklahoma City?
It was.
That one.
And
I never heard much about that.
Yeah.
Jim Shoulders buck and horse and bull sale
it
there.
was big back then, but that's why there's a rule now that if you're riding in the NFR, you can't get on during the buck and horse and bull sale.
Yeah, I don't think you can enter any
there.
other event anywhere in any other rodeo event, period.
I contributed to that, so.
That's all your fault.
Yeah.
Not that it's going to affect
You
my
mean they just considered you were practicing and
I don't know what.
advantage?
I guess they didn't want you getting hurt doing something else.
Or getting hurt, okay, yeah.
But, I just knew I wasn't going to keep falling off, and I fixed it, but I'd go get on something somewhere, get on turnouts. There weren't a lot of turnouts at the NFR, so that was the easiest thing to find back then in Oklahoma City. And now there might be other indoor arenas where they're bucking bulls, but there weren't back then.
You know, What was the environment like at the Oklahoma City NFR?
Really, it's different than it is in Las Vegas. It was a little more family in Oklahoma City, to be honest. Not as high pressure, not as much, not as much money, not as much sponsorship. I think now, because of the amount of money in Las Vegas, it's strictly business. I mean, there's still a little bit of the social deal, but you just don't mix like you did at the NFR in Oklahoma City.
It's a serious deal.
It's big
serious money.
business, Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wondered what it was like back then at that NFR, with the live band going they had, and,
Yeah.
it just had to be fun. What did they have the casinos and all the cowboy trade shows and stuff out there now, and tons of rodeo events going on all at the same time. What'd y'all do during the day or after the rodeo back then when it was in Oklahoma City?
I'd work out during the day just like I did during my career, and then I'd go run a couple miles after the perf, which guys laughed at me, and I thought, I'm going to do the same thing that got me here. So my deal was a little different. Now I think the attitude's changed some. Back then there weren't very many of those guys that had that I need to be working out attitude. But
No, definitely there's a lot more business-minded people,
Yeah.
and they take their body a lot serious than the old cowboys used
Yes,
to.
sir.
No doubt about it, for sure.
What do you think about that crazy money that's out there now?
Well, it's great. When I went into the NFR in 1980, I won the average there in the bull riding, and I think fourth in the average in the bareback riding, and won multiple go-rounds and placed in go-rounds in both events. And when I left there, we had a little money in the bank, but really all we did was pay off a lot of bills.
Yeah.
Back then you could spend a lot of money rodeo. I mean, you still can
Yeah.
today,
Right.
but it wasn't like I could go buy a ranch with what I won at the finals. It just gave us a nice cushion to start the coming year with.
Good Christian.
So it's a little different out there. You have a good finals out there, and I mean, you can retire. Some guys do.
Yeah.
But there's still some of those guys that, they get on the first one and get hurt, and it's a huge disappointment. And, that's every year, whether it was in Oklahoma City, probably back in Dallas or wherever. But it happens out there in Vegas too.
Yeah, I bet it's a long week for some, especially some of the bareback riders and bull riders that they're
Yeah.
not 100% coming in anyway.
The trivia that I like to use in my schools is what's the most go-rounds the NFR's been. And, those kids today, they don't know rodeo history, but it was 11 in Oklahoma City one year. And boy,
11 go-rounds.
Yeah, and this is the only way they could get more money because they were selling out every performance. So they added a perf. The mistake they made was they added it the last weekend instead of the first weekend, and those bareback riders were sore, and they were going to boycott. They said, we ain't doing this anymore. So they went back to 10 until it moved to Vegas, and, it didn't need to go to more go-rounds then. So that's a fun trivia that most people don't know.
I didn't know it. I knew they started at 8 and then it went to 9 and eventually 10, but I didn't realize it was ever 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimbo's rodeo historian,
Yeah,
and he does a
that went
rodeo trivia question every Tuesday out on
Yeah.
the internet.
Well, the other trivia for you is I won the bull riding. If you want to ask them who won it when it was 11 go-rounds, that was one of the years I won the average.
I might
so.
How many did you ride that year out of 11?
9.
Boy, wouldn't that have been something to ride 11? That'd put you the only person
Yeah. Both
to ride
years-
11 bulls at the NFR.
Yeah.
Both years I won the average. I rode 9 bulls, 2 more than anybody else. 7 was the next one to me. So I don't know. It just seemed like that was my deal to get on those better bulls. And gosh, today would be wonderful with the breeding programs that they have now.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to ask you what you think of these bulls today. They almost look unrideable, some of them.
Yeah, I think there's so much money. The problem is, except for the few really elite guys, they don't have to try as hard on every bull.
Right.
And once in a while, you'll hear somebody that knows talking about it on TV, but they don't want to talk their sport down either.
Right, right.
But yeah, they talked about it the other day on one of the team matches that I was watching. Somebody just turned their head and jumped off, and they diagrammed it and everything. They said it's a
Right.
disappointment for the team and for fans, when somebody doesn't try any harder than that. And I went, ooh, wow, that would have broken an egg in me for somebody to say
Well,
that.
I was
about
talking to a
me.
bull rider today, and I won't name his name, but he said it seems like they're looking for a place to get off, when they come out. Some of them,
Well, especially if those guys are going to get paid whether they make the whistle or not. You got to have some personal pride and character, and some of them do. But
Sure.
The beauty of, you guys go, why are those Brazilians winning everything? It's not because of that bull rope that pulls from the wrong side. That was a mistake, by the way. Most people don't know. Another trivia for you. I asked Adriano Marias about it, and he said, oh, yeah, it was a mistake. I said, seriously? He goes, yeah. He said, he lived in a house with a dirt floor, and the first time he got to watch videos, his dad borrowed a TV and a VCR and brought it over and to watch the finals, and the guy that won the average was Norman Curry, and which Adriano would go on to do himself. He was one of the handful of guys that rode 10 bulls at the NFR. It hadn't happened often. I thought it was a big deal to ride 9, but getting that 10th one was a little harder. And that's Benny's fault. He had an eliminator I had that year, last year, that I knew what he was going to do, and he was too little, and he'd 100 miles an hour make a turn left and then just scoot without kicking out from under me and just out the back door, and finally died, because my deal was I had to get on those till I rode him, even though you probably wouldn't have won anything if you rode him, but he died, so I didn't have to get on him anymore. But yeah, it's a different world nowadays, but those guys have such a great opportunity to be getting on good bulls every day, where you might go a ways between those good ones back when I was going, and you had to make an effort to be mentally up for those good bulls. So that's why the finals was so good for me. I love that environment. And, they had better bulls there than you might have at a regular rodeo course. And now you can, especially at the bull riding events that they have. So it's a great opportunity.
Well, did you ever have any major injuries?
No, I really didn't. I had injuries every single year, but they were the 6-week deals, 6 to 8 weeks at the most. And my rule back then is I can cut everything in half. Probably wasn't the best thing I did for long-term health, but, I could take a cast off half the time and be taping and getting back on. And to make the finals, the bareback ride, and I actually had a guy tying a horse in that let the rope go, and as the horse flipped as I was getting on, it caught my foot, tore the ligaments in my ankle. And I called my brother to see if I had enough to make the finals in the bareback riding, because that was my third event to qualify in. He said, I don't think so, and told me how much he thought I needed to win. So I went out to Silver Dollar City. I was in Branson and knew a guy that worked out there. So we went to the shop and fiberglassed a boot and had it painted so it looked like my other boot and split. I just take my cast off, put that boot on, and tape it. And so I didn't want it to be obvious. I didn't want any excuses when they marked scores. And we followed the storm all the way to Baton Rouge. We probably landed 4 or 5 times and couldn't find a commercial flight to get me in time for this rodeo, summer rodeo or fall rodeo. And I just barely made it. And somebody was waiting to get me to the rodeo grounds. And when I went in, I heard him holler, "Wait, don't turn him out. Here he comes." And I won the rodeo somewhere in New Orleans. And that was enough to put me over the edge so I could go heal up in time to get to our circuit finals, which was in Wichita at that time. So, I gave it a month instead of 2 months, and I was healthy when we got to Wichita for the circuit finals.
Well, heck, you just don't get paid if you're not doing it. That's the story of a cowboy.
Holy moly, that does sound pretty wild.
Yeah.
Go to Silver Dollar City, fiberglass you a boot deal up, and go win the rodeo in New Orleans.
I had forgotten some of my high school shop lessons, and I put 2 pair of socks on, but that wasn't enough, and it was really hot, and I can tell it's blistering. And I called my buddy over, and I'm almost whispering, which is what happens when I'm intense. And I said, "Bill, get that crowbar over there, and let's get this cast off right now." And he's always jacking around, but his eyes got big, and he said, "Guys, we need to get that cast off." Apparently getting pretty hot. And he knew if I was wanting to use a crowbar on he said, "On your broke leg, it must be hotter than we realized." Anyway, they didn't have to pry it off, but they got it loose and got it off there because it'd set up enough then. But I thought, well.
Did you tape it on?
Yeah.
Take it on, tape it on, tape it off?
Yeah, split front and back, so we just tape it on each time. And then I'd put my jeans down over it so none of it showed. Yes, sir.
What about this rodeo in New Orleans, though? I've never even heard of one down there.
Yeah, it was
in
right
that town.
on the outskirts of it.
Oh, okay.
And it was raining, muddy, and I had a really good horse, so I really needed to get there trying to make the finals. And we just made it. I mean, it was a matter of seconds to make it. And I won the bareback riding. So that put me over the top, and I really wanted to go to our circuit finals in Wichita. It was what you're building here, the best circuit finals in pro rodeo. And I was able to get healed up enough to go, and still make the national finals, so it worked out well.
Where did they have that circuit finals in Wichita? Was it at the Kansas Coliseum?
It was, yeah. It was nice while they were doing it there.
I helped Jerome Robinson a few times swap that over from an ice hockey ring to a rodeo.
Yeah.
Ken.
He and my brother were considered the two best at rodeo production.
I think so.
Jerome not maybe as grouchy as my brother, but they both are really good, know the business, and know what you have to do.
I sure learned a lot from him as a kid, it seemed like.
Yeah, Jerome, I learned a tremendous amount from Jerome. I didn't really get a rodeo with him much because he was just riding bulls, and I was working all three events, but whenever I had a chance to stay with him, I knew there weren't going to be 8 guys splitting a mattress and come in late, and try and drag some old girl up in the room and griping in the morning when you're up on the phone doing business. Jerome and I had the same attitude, so it worked out really good, and I learned a lot from him about the rodeo business.
Heck yeah.
What do you think about today's rodeo law with the tournament style? Would you have liked that, or?
It was kind of starting. They had a Winston Rodeo series when I was going, but again, if you weren't qualified in all the events, and I was still trying to make the finals in all 3, so I didn't go to any of those. I just kept going to rodeos. And, but it's a little different now. With some of those special events, they now count for points. Back then, they didn't. And, like the Extreme Bulls count for points towards the finals. So had that been the case back then, I'd have went to those special events.
Sure you would.
It'd been good, but they had different rules back then and wouldn't let you count them, so I just went to rodeos.
But to me, the rodeos today don't have an average. You just qualify each. You have to re-qualify, be the top 8 or whatever.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
That type of tournament, individual rodeo. Some of them are like that, some of the bigger ones, and
Right.
I don't know. It was okay for me. The only difference is if you have multiple go-rounds and they limit entries, you may not have the best one in the pen, but by limiting entries, they can have better livestock, so it's a little more level playing field. And that's where the tournament thing, they have their feature cowboys there, as
Right.
well as they can have better livestock and not have to haul so much stuff in.
Right.
So, there's a lot of advantages. It can be better for the fans.
Right.
Sometimes it's a little harder for a young guy starting out. But,
Yeah.
if you can ride, you're going to get there.
Yeah, I think the timed event guys would rather have an average a lot of times, where the rough stock guys, half of what they do is a one-header anyway.
Right. Right.
Most of what they do. So
Yeah.
I don't think it really matters so much.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think
Yeah.
to the rough stock guys would a timed event guy, because the average
Right.
is everything, not just someone who ties the fastest one in the short round.
Right.
So,
Right.
well, Jimbo, what else you got for old Lyle today?
Well, Lyle, if you were making a Mount Rushmore, you're an all-around hand. If you were making a Mount Rushmore of all-around hands, I need 4 names. Who would you put on it?
Well,
They don't have to be anybody you even saw go, but just whoever you think deserves to be
oh
on it.
my gosh. Well, it'd be hard not to have Ty Murray and Jim Shoulders, Trevor Brazil. It'd be hard for me not to have Jim Shoulders on there, but I could name 5 more guys that were sensational that could be on there, a Bobby Berger or whatever. But, those guys that I've got to see in my lifetime were phenomenal. And Larry Mahan, how do you not have him up there? I mean, those guys changed so much in the sport. Jim did, when he started, guys weren't going to multiple rodeos. They go to New York and stay, except Jim started all that traveling during multiple rodeos. Ty Murray followed Larry Mahan, and Larry was flying everywhere, changed a lot of things. And then what Ty did is he changed the sponsorship payoff. He wouldn't take some of the typical old sponsors that were really pretty sorry for a guy in what's supposed to be a pro sport. And he changed pro rodeo and what guys were making from their sponsors.
Right.
That's true.
And what do you say about Trevor Brazil?
Yeah.
For a time eventer, he's pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty fair.
It's a good thing he never rrode any rough stock, because he'd have done the same thing in that probably.
Absolutely, yeah.
He'd have probably done
I
the
was going
same
to ask you,
thing.
how's it feel to be a living legend inductee?
Oh, gosh. Well, it's humbling. I could think of 10 people pretty quick that I'd have probably told you to go with them first. But It's definitely a tremendous honor to be here. And again, for me, the big thrill was with John Macbeth being here because of his impact on my career. It was huge. I mean, there's no way to measure it. Yeah. And
he's a winner for sure.
We talked about riding and technique and how to win on different horses, but the whole attitude thing, usually it was pretty much just encouragement. The only time he ever scared me is he asked me about a rodeo in California I was going to, and he said, "What do you got?" And I told him, I didn't have a clue what this horse was. It didn't matter. I was 3 events. I was going anyway. And he said, "I don't let those stories scare you. He's not as bad as they say." And I'm thinking, well, crap. I wasn't worried about him till now. If you're telling me that, what is there to worry about? And I got along with him fine, but I didn't see that one coming.
Did you ever have any hairy airplane experiences getting to and from a rodeo?
I did, actually.
Let's hear one of them real quick.
Well, my plane, we had gas caps sucking the fuel off. We put brand new gas caps on, and they did it again. And it was actually the plane I bought from Donnie Gay.
Okay.
And I've had mechanics go, we have never heard of that happening. For you to even get one set of gas caps, but to get 2 in a row, 2 brand new sets it was pretty scary because we just about didn't make a couple airports. And one of them was trying to get to El Paso, where I had 3 7s, the Buck and Bull of the Year that was out 200 times unridden. And, ended up winning the all-around there and being the first one to ride him. That one was pretty scary. And then we had another time we leased a plane. I didn't have mine. Bruce Ford was with me, and we had a girl flying. I don't know what she was thinking, but there was the heated heat. She didn't turn on, so we had a partial instrument panel and iced up. And I took over flying the plane because she was Bruce was going nuts in the back, and she was panicking and keeping it level. Well, if you ice up, you can't get your wings turned. I said, "I'll fly the plane." Bruce didn't think I could fly until then. I said, "You figure out where we are and what's below us. I got to know how low we can get." And later, Bruce said, "I ain't going back in that plane with her." But he said, "I thought that was all bull about you being able to fly." But he said, "That did change my mind, Russell. You take it and tell her I'll fly. You figure out where we are." And, we got out of it. But I said, don't ever do that again. She just made a mistake, but it can be pretty costly when you're in an airplane.
I bet.
Those were the 2 scariest.
Why don't you guys carry parachutes around in the middle of the plane? That's what I've always wondered.
Yeah, I don't think my plane was made to parachute out of.
If it's going down.
Yeah.
Of course, her plane we were in with her was a wing under like Bobby Berger's. That'd have been a little harder to jump out of.
Well, Mike, explain a minute how this living legend got started.
Well, as I said many times, I started at the fairgrounds as the director there in 2010. And at the time, I was looking for events, to help promote the fairgrounds and the community around here in Duncan. And so somewhere in 2011, I guess it was, I had a bunch of cowboys and cowgirls there, and we were all talking and visiting. And one of the girls said, "Why don't you get the circuit finals in Duncan?" And I told them, I said, "We're not Kansas City, and we're not the Lazy E. I'm not sure we're big enough for the circuit finals." They said, "Well, call Bronc Rumpert." So I thought, okay. So I just walked over to the office, looked the number up, called him. Nicest guy you've ever talked to in your life. And he said, "Yeah, Mike, why not?" He said, "I'll help. I'll do whatever." I said, "What do I need to do?" I didn't have any idea what to do. He said, "First, we got to get a committee." So I got a committee together, 5 or 6 people. In fact, they were outside watching me talk on the phone. And we got started there, and I got to thinking about, we need to do something. I'm always wanting to go above and beyond, what's expected. And I thought, why not do a living legend? My brother had done a living legend at the Velma Picnic, which is east of here.
That's the oldest celebration in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Very cool.
He started the living legends out there for, 15, 16 years. And I thought, why not do a Prairie Circuit living legend? Bronc said, "That's a great idea." He said, "How are you going to?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to talk to you and Benny because y'all know everybody in the circuit." Benny told me, Benny Butler, he said, let's stay with Oklahoma for a while, and you've got so many in the Stevens County area here, which we did. And so we just went to picking barrel racers, calf ropers, because that's mainly what we had. And gosh, for 6-7 years, that's what we did. And then he got to the point to where we couldn't remember. I couldn't remember some of the people, and like Lyle here. I didn't know Lyle, Anyway, I sat down with Doug Clark and Linda, and I said, would y'all be on a committee with me? We have a subcommittee of the circuit finals committee. And they said, yeah. I said, we'd like to do that. We think that's a good idea. And Doug had been involved with the Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City. So that's how we started, and Doug and I was having lunch. Oh, it's been back in the fall last year, and he said, who are we going to do next year? And I said, well, I'd like to do John Macbeth. I said, is anybody else? You think of anybody else? And he said, yeah, I like Ronnie Bowman.
That's so
and I
good.
said, I didn't even know Ronnie was around here anymore. And I said, who else? He said, Lyle Sankey. And I said, well, I know an Ike Sankey, but I don't think I've heard of Lyle. That's his brother. Yeah. I said, that's great. Good idea. I said, now give me some phone numbers. He said, call John. He's got all the phone numbers. So I called John, and I got everybody but Lyle's number. And I was scratching my head trying to figure out, I don't ever give up on anything, never. And I ran into Jim McLean. And Jim, I said, I've got to find Lyle Sankey's number so I can call him. He said, just a minute. There it is. And I went straight out. I called Lyle, and he's here.
Yeah.
All three of them are here. So that's how we do it, and that's how it started. And what's got it started for me in my thinking is I was at a rodeo in Fort Worth, and a friend of mine came up to me, and he said, Mike, let's come over here. I want to introduce you to a hero of mine. And I said, okay. So we walked down the Will Rogers Arena, whatever. We went down through there and walked down to the box seats. And he said, right here he is. The guy stood up, turned around. He's Glenn Franklin.
Yeah.
And I said, you don't have to introduce this guy to me. I know this guy. Anyway, he turned around. He looked at me. He stuck his hand out. He said, you know me? And I said, oh, yeah. I said, at one time, you were the man of men in the calf roping. He said, people at home don't even remember me anymore. And he was there introducing his son to the professional rodeo, Sean. Mm-hmm. And I got to thinking, we can't let guys like Glenn Franklin, we can't let them people be forgotten. We can't let Lyle be forgotten. So we make absolutely sure that's not going to happen anymore. And to date, as of this year, we've done 34 since 2012.
Wow, that's great.
So that's how it all came about.
Sure, good idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks
Glad
for doing
you're
it, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, you got anything else for him now, Jimbo?
Well, just thank them and thank them for inviting us, Mike, for inviting us down here, and we were glad to come. And
we're proud you came.
And thank Lyle for taking time to sit in with us.
It's an honor. Thank you.
I feel like we could go on for about another hour. I got a million things I'd like to talk to you about, Lyle, but we are on a little bit of a schedule today, trying to get everybody through. So, man, we sure appreciate you coming on.
Oh, well, it's been an honor. I'm glad to be here. Like I said, John was so instrumental in my career. I probably would have told you should call Ike instead of me, but I couldn't do that since you had John here. I thought, man, this is a big deal. So I was very excited.
Well, we're
and
proud to have
I knew
you.
who Ronnie was, of course, but John was hands-on. So
Yeah, well, we're proud to have you as one of our legends.
Thank you. I
You're
appreciate
part of
it.
the family, and we want you to come back year after year if you can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Y'all still doing any rodeo schools or anything like that?
Yeah, I actually have one in Kiefer Mounds area in 2 weeks. And then the week after that, I have one up by Springfield, Missouri.
If anyone's looking to go to one, how do they find out about them?
Just our website. They just do Sankey Rodeo Schools. It'll come up on any of those search engines.
Okay. And I'm sure you can help them out.
Yep, we'd be glad to have them.
You probably do you work as much on the mental side with those kids
do.
as you do the physical
We
side
try
of
to
it?
work with each student based on how they are coming in and what they need to work on. And it's a mix from guys just curious, the adventure seekers, to guys wanting to get better. So it's a little bit of a mix, but we've been really blessed. We limit our schools, so part of that is some of them have been filling up as much as 4 months in advance. And we have a waiting list, and so when that one's full, then they find another one and start enrolling, so then it fills up. So we're really blessed.
Was it your school that Tim McGraw went 4.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu?
Yeah, that song actually got us students back then. It's interesting.
I was just kidding.
Yeah,
He was there?
I think that's just a song.
Oh, okay.
I've had guys that said that's exactly why I enrolled in the school. Live like you're dying.
Yep.
And yeah, it's been really good.
Oh, my.
Well, all right, everyone interested in
Thank you.
any
very
kind of rough
much.
stock, get a hold of these guys. All right.
Appreciate you.
We'll see y'all next week. Thanks, Lyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Old stories like long lost friends, rodeos and late night bends, history before our time, round pens and pasture rides, cowboys of the Osage.